Hello, cześć, and welcome to another Hearts of Iron 4 Dev Diary. Today, in part 1, we're going to be talking about the mass amount of content coming to Poland in the next 1.11 update, but not as the next DLC. For those who remember, Poland was originally released as a free DLC called United and Ready, which everybody can get. As a result, the new update coming for Poland is in its own part completely free, and will be releasing at the same time as 1.11 and the main DLC that is to come. So, sit back, relax, maybe get yourself a cup of tea, maybe feel free to subscribe, and let's listen to all the free content coming in the next update. So part 1 begins by discussing the interesting situation that Poland is in. As we all very well know, sandwiched between Germany and the Soviets is not the best place to be in the 1930s. As we see here, Ignacy, please correct me if I've said his name wrong, has got a brand new profile picture. Profile picture? Remaining as a non-aligned authoritarian regime, Poland also has new ideas and national spirits which are probably going to have to be overcome, including this rather interesting looking crown and trumpets on the right. I'm interested to see what that's going to be. So of course let's jump straight into the focus tree, and as we can see from this long scrolling image, there's quite a lot of stuff to it, including the massive secret future stuff that is a bit unknown to us as of right now and is probably going to be addressed in part 2. This is where all the alt history stuff is, I'm going to assume. The focus tree begins by discussing the industrial branch, which, for those who remember, was a bit of a nightmare to get through. It had very lackluster research bonuses, and getting to your research slot was just so slow, with very little rewards as you go down. So now, apparently these focuses have much more factories to give you, and much greater bonuses. Poland's new industry tree now grants very powerful but temporary bonuses which can be used at any point during the game. Deciding when you're going to take these focuses is one of the key points to playing Poland as best you can, time being everything, as because halfway through 1939 your life comes to a tumultuous end. Here we see National Defence Fund giving you those negative 15% consumer goods, very powerful for an early industry build, and on the right we see the Central Defence of Poland, which very interestingly gives you massive landfort construction speed, maybe for building a large wall along a river line to defend yourself. I guess that's up to you. As a side note, I just thought I'd bring up, if you look back at the industry tree, the Polish School of Mathematics is seen as the second focus you can take in the industry tree. Previously, getting down to your focus slots was kind of a nightmare to do, so assuming that is a new research slot, that's going to be a lot easier to get at the start of the game. Now onto the state of Poland in 1936, which, in typical Hoi4 fashion, is covered in national debuffs and incoming civil wars. The first one the Dev Diary covers is the looming peasant strike, as we can see here. Due to Poland previously being 3 different nations that have sort of been connected together through some weird treaties, it means that the railway networks and the agricultural networks and essentially the flow of food from the networks to the people is completely broken. As a result, it will be your responsibility to fix this, otherwise the people of Poland aren't going to be very happy, and the debuffs will come en masse. The longer you leave the peasant strike, the worse the effects are going to get. These include the consumer good factories going up, stability going down, massive hit to construction speed and factory output, and these are the things that are really going to dampen you in your ability to defend yourself against Germany and the Soviets. Interestingly, it also increases your democracy and communism support. I don't know if this is going to be a faster way to flip from one ideology to another by sort of encouraging the peasants to revolt, but maybe I'm speculating too much on part 2 of the Dev Diary. So, using the new railway mechanic, you're going to have to build up your infrastructure and appease the peasants in the best way you can. If you'd prefer not to, and think that's a waste of time, you can sort of crack down on the peasants by sticking divisions in certain states, and that should give you more time. This is probably similar to how it worked in Manchuria, with the divisions on certain tiles, and that's how you remove the bandits. And most interestingly, if you choose to ignore them, you could end up with this. What is this? Why is this here? What is this green mess that has occurred on my screen? So by ignoring the peasants, a Polish peasant union uprising has occurred in Belarus, Ukraine, and on the southern borders of Poland. My goodness me. It's so strange looking. A part of me just wants to let it win. One does not stop the Polish peasants with their pitchforks. They are too powerful. Another issue that Poland's going to suffer from is DANZIG. Now, DANZIG is mostly the crux of the start of World War II, the Germans using it as their justification for their war on Poland. So as you can see from this image, DANZIG is now its own unique one-tile state, OPM if you prefer. So the way in which they've tried to recreate the strange position DANZIG lies in as a free city which also maintains its autonomy and is distinct from Poland is by keeping it as a part of Poland, but making it an international city, as we can see down here. This means that Poland doesn't get any of the factories or manpower or resources from this city. As a result of the Reich's influence in DANZIG, it's kind of stopped Poland's economy because that was their greatest port, and the party having control there has really hampered Poland's ability. As a result, Poland starts off with the embargoed economy law. The embargoed economy law works similarly to the undisturbed isolation that the US has, although not nearly as harsh. And in order to repair this, there are a few ways that you're going to have to go about dealing with DANZIG. The next part of the focus tree deals with your embargoed economy and the problem of DANZIG and its independence. The first option is to develop shipbuilding in Gdynia. Tell me again if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Effectively just circumventing DANZIG and building a new port. Hey, we don't need them, right? The second option, not seen on the focus tree, but entirely possible, is to just find yourself with another port. I guess the easiest option is to somehow get Lithuania back, the classic Commonwealth. I'm pretty sure you can get a port off the Lithuanian coast. The last option is to clamp down on DANZIG, which is a bit more of the aggressive path to dealing with DANZIG, but it will get you those resources that DANZIG was harbouring. By attempting to seize control of DANZIG, the old resistance system that was implemented is going to be a key point in order to try and gain control of the unruly city. We can see here from these decisions that through using unification propaganda and appeasement and such, this is the path you're going to be using to slowly gain that collaboration and then effectively bring DANZIG back into the fold and get rid of that embargoed economy. On the other hand, if you fail to get DANZIG back into the fold, the Reich has firmly got their grasp on DANZIG and will cause it to revolt against you. This time, as a unique tag, DANZIG will be its own independent country, its own tag, and possibly with its own leader, but I haven't seen the portrait to prove it. Before we move on to the next part of the focus tree, I'd like to go back and look at the original state picture we saw for DANZIG. So this image actually tells us a lot about what the new interface for states is going to look like. We can see here that infrastructure is now limited to 5, and we get a very sort of well-established overview of the infrastructure of the country right at the top of the screen. Also, in the bottom left, we can now see that supply and railroads are very clearly labelled at the bottom, DANZIG having a pretty decent railway network as far as I can tell. And more interestingly than that, we can also see that there are 2 foreign claims on DANZIG. Now the first one we just covered. That is the flag for the free city of DANZIG. It's the second flag that was most interesting to me. Now initially, I thought that was the flag of the Habsburg monarchy. So unless Austria-Hungary's got a claim on DANZIG that I didn't know about, I was vastly mistaken. But after looking through the comments, I now know it's actually Kashubia. Kashubia, as far as I can tell, is a region linked most by language and cultural identity in eastern Pomerania. It has rather interesting borders, and as a releasable tag, I'm wondering if you can sort of release it and create a division border between you and Germany. The key point regardless is new releasable tags are coming, and Kashubia is at the top of the list. The next section of the focus tree is the Prepare for the Next War branch, which previously was kind of a small little military path giving you some minor technological boosts, land doctrine bonuses, the simple stuff. While that section of the tree still remains, we have the more interesting path to the right seen here with the Plan East and Plan West paths. Now these two paths are effectively dedicating your country to defending either the eastern border against the Soviets or the western border against the Germans, and these will give you big buffs and probably defensive abilities, maybe fortification lines, just to defend Poland as best you can. The most interesting point is, you can only do one and the other once you've completed the first one you started. So you'd have to do all of Plan West before you can do Plan East, and vice versa. This effectively means you'll have to 100% consider the consequences of which path you pick if you're going to go down either of them. I think this is a great mechanic. This is so interesting that it's not mutually exclusive. I'm not really a fan of mutually exclusive. However, it does keep the idea that the choice really does matter, because you can do both, but timing is everything. Just looking at some of the focuses here, we can see that there is a big emphasis on the conscripts and army, so I wonder if this is where a lot of the recruitable population is going to come from. As a side note, and just maybe it's a personal pet peeve, but the Plan East focus is on the left, as in west, and the Plan West focus is on the right, as in the east where the Soviets are. It feels like they're flipped. Maybe this is just a personal pet peeve, but why is Germany on the right and the Soviets on the left? This is not the borders they have. And the last part of the dev diary, yep, we're finally getting there, is dedicated to the historical branch of the political focus tree. So this is the path you'll be going down if you're playing historical World War II Poland. It begins with the completion of the April Constitution, which is kind of the key point to establishing the authoritarian state that Poland was in historically. It should be said that this period of history was so complicated that it is seemingly impossible to describe anything about it without somebody correcting you. So if I say anything that's wrong, I would like to apologise in advance. I'm sure I will. That being said, let's look at the historical path after you complete the April Constitution. So the factionalism that is inside of authoritarian Poland has been represented with three key factions: the SANATION left, the SANATION right, and the Castle. Now the authoritarianism led by the Castle and Ignacy will be the main figurehead historical path for you to take on, but trying to balance out the left and the right factions is going to be key to deciding how you choose to play Poland. As you progress down the tree, what you'll have to do is balance out the left and the right by either appeasing them or trying to completely distance yourself from them as best you can, picking and choosing which policies you want to conform with them, and hopefully trying to create the best outcome for the authoritarian government that you've created. You can form a government with any of the policies. There's no mutually exclusive again, which I like again, but the longer you take forming your government, the less time you have things for your industry and the East and West plans that we talked about earlier. The dev diary goes on to say that when you take the April Constitution, it starts off as like a not very good national spirit with debuffs to political gain and advisor cost, etc., etc. But the more you dedicate to improving your authoritarian regime with making allies on the left and the right and pushing forward, you can improve the April Constitution with stability, unaligned support, more economic discounts, all that good stuff. On the flip side, if you choose not to work with them, the left and the right will become more and more sort of agitated by your inability to work with them, and they, in their own right, will give you a national spirit, which gives you more debuffs, as seen here with consumer good factories down, stability, and unaligned support. You can also see in this image how you can sideline the left and the right, which is probably your way of cutting them out of the deal. By continuing to sideline the different factions of the left and the right, you'll eventually get them into a point of civil war. The dev diary talks about how every time you focus on the left, you agitate the right, and every time you focus on the right, you agitate the left. So pushing them further and further away may eventually result in a civil war. Here we can see two portraits for the individuals that will be leading each side of the left and the right. Also look at how the Polish flag looks different. That was kind of trendy, doesn't it? On the flip side, if you choose not to irritate and in fact wholly support the left or right, there is the option that the left or the right can actually supersede the castle government and take the position of the chairman of Poland. It will be up to you to create this sort of slightly light alt history moments, which I think is pretty cool all round. Now, once you've settled yourself with your interior politics, it's time to focus on exterior politics, because the world is very interested in Poland, and the historical option is of course to align with the West and join the Allies, which is available to left, right or castle. It doesn't really matter which side you've picked. There is, however, the bonus option now of giving Lithuania an ultimatum. In 1938, the Polish gave an ultimatum to Lithuania in which Poland demanded the end to the Cold War for Vilnius. In this, if Lithuania does accept, you can just annex them all right and get the Commonwealth reborn. The dev diary briefly touches on the new revised Romanian bridgehead strategy, which is now a more diplomatic choice and can hopefully bring the alliance with Romania to be much closer than it was in the previous version. Now, if you don't choose to go with the castle, and perhaps chose to go with the SANATION right, you now have the Polish revanchism, which should involve some pretty big justifications, war goals, annexation, all that good stuff. So of course, the first part is demanding the Lithuanian annexation, as was the previous one, but you go down a key point to restoring the Commonwealth of Poland and Lithuania. There is also a path on the left that we can see with a pan-Slavic revanchism in the hopes of annexing Czechoslovakia. It should be noted that you don't get cores on Czechoslovakia when you're trying to confederate the Polish and Czechoslovaks. It's just an annex goal. And of course, equally, there's the left side, which now has the Baltic security path. The key point of this is guarding your, surrounding neighbours, protecting Czechoslovakia, protecting the Baltics, and hopefully trying to coordinate with Romania into some kind of alliance. And of course, alliances is the key point that we all remember, because who hasn't played Poland and seen the Międzymorze? So speaking of alliances, it's hard to forget the faction that is the Międzymorze. So now any path can really create the Międzymorze. All you need to do is become a major country, be a faction leader, and have a very large army. As we can see from this focus, the key point is becoming that faction leader. So whichever other focuses give you the opportunity to form an alliance with another country, those focuses are effectively unlocking the Between the Seas concept, which then gives you the ability to grow the alliances even further. And going back to the original image, we can just see the size of it. We've got the North Sea, and somehow getting all of Scandinavia on your side, the Mediterranean with the Czechoslovaks, the Austro-Hungarians somehow, even pushing down to Greece and the Bosporus, and most importantly, on the bottom right, there's the potential to form an Italian alliance. Goodness knows how you convince Benito Mussolini to be on your side, but good luck to everyone who tries. And that is all the dev diary covers this time. That's the end of it. Look, we end here and it goes down into the comments. But that's not, of course, the end, because the comment section is typically a treasure trove of bonus information. So stay with me and let's go see what we can find. I think one of the key points is that the Hoi4 content designer Mika66 does confirm that that flag we saw earlier, the yellow and black one, is Kashubia. No Austria-Hungary this time, sadly. Going further, we did get an interesting question about how we're supposed to tempt Italy away from the Axis if you are staying unaligned. There's no word of an Italian rework this DLC. I don't think Italy's getting any rework at all this cycle. However, what we do see is the Międzymorze unlocks a decisions tab, as seen here, where you can send missions to Finland, Denmark, etc., which apparently increases the chance that they join your faction. So previously, you just click a focus, the AI would get the option to join your faction, and they'd either accept or decline. Now it seems like it's more so, you unlock the ability to start using decisions to try and convince them to join your faction, which is a much better way of doing it if you ask me. We also get to find out what the Polish Peasant Union looks like, with Stanislaw being its leader, with his, look at his little suit there, aww. Another thing that was revealed is Lithuania does have the ability to regain Vilnius without going to war. As seen here, they can say, I can confirm that under certain circumstances, Lithuania can regain Vilnius without war. However, what those circumstances are were not explicit enough to tell us too much, but it is possible. So that's it, that's all we're going to cover this time. Goodness, this is a huge tree. It definitely feels like a tree that you're supposed to do over like different playthroughs to see different outcomes. I think it's definitely going to be a skill-based tree too, really having to decide what is important instead of taking random focuses that sound cool. Yeah, I'm really excited for it. It really looks good. But of course, feel free to tell me what you think about Poland in the comment section below, because I know that everybody will have many different opinions about this one. And yeah, we're going to cover more dev diaries as they come out, including the second part of Poland. So, thank you very much for watching. If you want to see more, feel free to subscribe, feel free to like, feel free to tell me what you think about Poland, and I will see you all next time. Bye!